Hello and welcome to the 11th season of North Country Matters. My name is Donna Seymour. I'm a member of the St. Lawrence County branch of the American Association of University Women, one of the civic partners for this show. Today we have Valerie Dana and Caitlin Hill with the St. Lawrence Valley Renewal House for victims of family violence in the studio with us. Welcome back, Val and Caitlin. You have been great guests over the years, and we're here to talk today about Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month, which is coming up in February. Working with young people is something that is an integral part of what you do at Renewal House all year long. But in February, we get a chance to really focus in on teenagers and their relationships, and maybe we can talk a little bit about what we can do to make sure that they're having healthy relationships. Studies show that at least 1 in 10 teens will be in an abusive relationship, and under federal laws like Title IX and the Violence Against Women Act, and state laws like the Dignity for All Students Act, violence prevention work is really important, especially when it's a community group like yours that comes into the schools, because sometimes that outside voice becomes the voice of authority in a way that the people that they're seeing every day, they may not tend to pay as much attention to. And so that can really improve the climate for families, for schools, and for, in our particular case in St. Lawrence County, the 4 colleges as well. Caitlin, will you give us a thumbnail sketch of what Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month is and what it entails?
Sure, definitely. So like you said, Donna, Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month starts in February, and it's a whole month dedicated to raising awareness about teen dating violence. And one thing that I think is really important to note about teen dating violence is that it's very similar to domestic violence. In fact, it is domestic violence. It's just among a younger age group, the teenagers, the young adults. And I think it's also important from an adult standpoint. I think they don't necessarily take these younger relationships seriously. They think that, oh, they're not able to go out on a date. They don't go to the dinner or the movies or something like maybe a 20-something or somebody in their 30s might do. But in fact, these kids are dating. They're having relationships, and they're having relationships at younger and younger ages, 11, 12 sometimes. So it's really important to focus on them and to focus on teaching them what a healthy relationship is in the beginning, so that they don't go down the road of having an unhealthy relationship. Part of Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month is It's Time to Talk Day on February 3rd, and that's just, again, having people raise awareness on what is a healthy relationship, what does it look like. I definitely encourage parents and educators to go to itstimetotokday.org. It talks about how you can get involved. It talks about some conversation starters, some talking points to have with your teenager or somebody in your life about this. Do they know what a healthy relationships look like versus unhealthy? To get involved, you can pledge to have a conversation with a young person in your life. You can just tell even 2 people about It's Time to Talk Day on that day and just actually talk about it. You can look at what are some of the images that we're getting in the media. When you're watching a movie with your child, there's so many relationships in that movie. Just talk. Does that look like a healthy relationship or not? It's really easy to do, and it's really easy to do at a young age even. I mean, I know right now a lot of kids are into, Frozen, the Disney movie, 4 or 5-year-olds. You can talk with them about what does that relationship look like? Is that healthy? Is that not? Because they're capable of understanding that even at that young of an age.
Yes, that's a good point. That media awareness is such a critical part of building healthy relationships, because we are exposed all the time to relationships that are not that great based on their media portrayal. One of the things you mentioned, that the similarities between teen dating violence and domestic violence. One of the differences is that teen dating violence can actually, a lot of that relationship work actually can happen in the school setting, which is not the same maybe as a more domestic or a home-based type thing. So that's something to be aware of, that really puts some onus on the schools to make sure that they're a healthy place as well. Val, you have a new job, or at least a new position at Renewal House. You're now the child advocate educator and the educator. So what does that entail, and how do the activities that Renewal House has planned for Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month, what have you got coming up this month specifically to deal with February.
Well, actually, it's a great point that you brought up that teen dating violence happens in the school setting a lot. Educators are actually noticing this, and we are getting a lot of requests at our office for presentations in the school districts based on kind of what they're seeing happening with their own students. We're getting a lot of requests for what is healthy versus unhealthy. You know, come out and talk about what your services are so teens know that there's a place to go. And that there's somebody that they could talk to confidentially about, you know, what's going on. So we don't really necessarily have a lot of stuff planned at Renewal House, but we're doing a lot of these presentations in lieu that it is, in lieu of Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month. They're seeing it, they're noticing it, and they're asking for us to come out as a resource to educate. Because as Kate said, as young adults, you know, these might be the first relationships they're even kind of engaging in, so they don't know necessarily what's healthy and unhealthy, what boundaries to set, you know, what things they might, you know, what limits that they want to set with their partner. So it's great to be educated about what's healthy so that when they, you know, enter into a relationship, they can see, you know, what those red flags are and that it might be unhealthy and be able to know what resources are available so that they don't feel like they have to stay in that relationship.
So there are 17 school districts up here, and you have programs that you can put on in all of them. Is Renewal House part of the educational experience that every school is offering?
I don't know that we go to every school, but we go where we're asked to go. There's a lot of things we're trying to implement, you know, we're based on grants, of course. We never know if we have the funding, but we have a lot of resources that we use that we're talking to the schools about. One of them is the Safe Dates program that we're kind of trying to get up and running somewhere if somebody could have us, you know, come in for a long period of time because it's a little bit longer of a course. But we do offer, you know, K through 12, you know, some programs such as Hands Are Not for Hitting for kids just younger to introduce what family violence might be and that it's not tolerated even from parents, all the way up through teen dating violence with the higher grades. And the same thing with the sexual abuse, you know, that can be part of these relationships. We talk about, you know, safe touch and how to keep your body safe for kids who are in those younger grades, all the way up through to what is sexual assault, what is consent with the higher grades. So those are all encompassed kind of in those presentations, but again, it's tailored based on what the students' needs are and what the teachers are witnessing happening at their schools.
But it's nice that the schools are starting to outreach to you and that they're aware that they really need to be paying attention to these kinds of things. Caitlin, we've talked on previous occasions about the kinds of relationship abuse that can occur around electronic media. But every year, a new group of teens and preteens are introduced to these personal technological devices like smartphones and what all. And I'm sure a lot of them got a new piece of equipment for Christmas, so they really are exploring the possibilities of this. I know my granddaughter got a smartphone, and she's way smarter about smartphones than I am. So
and all the apps that have already changed and came out since Christmas.
Exactly. So so these kids are tech savvy, and even though parents put limits on things, and there's some technological limits you can put on them, there's still a lot of room to get into trouble with these things. And certainly, you know, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12-year-olds have no idea what the legal repercussions of some of this stuff could be. So let's chat a little bit about what happens with electronic messaging and photos, and how quickly a situation that was meant to be private can go public in the worst possible way.
Definitely. Well, sexting, you're right, we have talked about that before, and basically that involves sharing you know, nude or naked pictures or risque photos. And there's actually some statistics on the matter because it is becoming a huge phenomenon right now. In fact, it's so important that 3 out of 10 young people are involved in sexting. 1 out of 5 recipients of a sext have sent that sext along to someone else. And of those, more than 50% of those who have shared it with multiple people. So it's really important that these kids know that if you are involved in that, if you are pressured into sending a photo, or if you send it on your own accord, the ramifications that could have. And this is where revenge porn kind of comes out of, because maybe within the context of that relationship, they feel safe, they feel it's a healthy relationship, they're sharing this picture with their partner, but then a breakup may happen, and now one person is angry over the breakup, maybe they didn't want it to happen, maybe they're embarrassed for whatever reason, now they're threatening to share those pictures, or maybe not even threatening, maybe they just do. and they're sharing it with their friends, they're posting it on Facebook, they're doing whatever they want with this image. And it's really important to understand that the age of consent in New York is 17. So if you're sharing a photograph of somebody that's under the age of 17, that could now be construed as child pornography, and those are federal charges that you can have on you. So it's really important, especially for our under 17-year-olds, to know that, and to know that even if you're under 17 sharing a photo of an under 17-year-old, you can still get charged. You don't have any protection because you're under 17 also. A lot of people think that with Snapchat or some of these things that it will get deleted. But the thing of the matter is that it still stays on that hard drive, and police can still recover that, and it will still be on that computer, and somebody could still hack that. You know, maybe it's deleted, maybe it's in the recycle bin, but it still is on that computer somewhere or on that phone. We have helped some clients get help with this. They'll come to us. I mean, people could be facing extortion charges or bribery if they're saying, you know, I'm going to send this video if you don't do this, or I'm going to send this picture if you don't do this. And we've had clients come to us asking for help, and we've helped them access the legal system through that. You can certainly, we can help you go to the police if the police isn't an option for you, which some people just don't want to do that. We found ways to go through family court. We've actually, our family court judge has actually been able to issue an order of protection in a case similar to this revenge porn case, where the language in the order of protection directed the individual to refrain from disseminating any images of this person. And if he did so, he would be held liable for criminal charges. So it's really important. If somebody may be embarrassed, they may not want to access services because this has happened to them, you know, we're a judgment-free zone, and we will help you access any of the options that are right for you. They can always just come to us and talk about their options, and there's really no need to be embarrassed. And speaking of that too, another statistic I found said that 61% of those who have sent a sext have been pressured to do so at least once. So it's really important that this is something that's happening with our young people, whether they're sending them of their own accord or sending them because they've been pressured into it. There's really a lack of knowledge concerning it. So, you know, just come into our office and ask questions, ask for help, and we can definitely help them in any way possible.
You know, one of the things that, and this is certainly something that I think schools could help with, but we need electronic media awareness education. It's very desperately needed, and it's needed on a broad scale in the society. But talking about these kinds of things when a very young person gets involved in a situation like the emotional blackmail, the fear of it getting out, and you know, what do my parents say, or more importantly, what will the rest of the middle school say when they see these pictures and things like that. So, you know, what kinds of things do you think, the two of you think, would be really useful in terms of how do we educate young people about this before it happens, so that they're not having to figure out who to go to for help because they were able not to get involved in the situation in the first place?
I think especially now, kind of as a role of an educator and being out there in a lot of the schools, I talk a lot about what the laws are surrounding kind of technology, especially with the images that are being sent. And we talk about it because, you know, I feel like it's our job kind of as the adults to educate kids who are coming into these laws, are going to be held liable to these laws, to know what they are. I mean, like Kate said before, if you're under the age of 17, which a lot of the school age children are that I talk with, you can face federal charges for things like this. And I think it's so scary to see some of the faces kind of go stone cold when you're talking about it, like, oh my gosh, that could really be happening to me right now, and I can't just go delete it. She said it'll still be there. So I already feel like kids really need to know this because it's happening and they're not aware. Another thing is to be aware of the age of consent and know that 17, it doesn't matter. And when I ask students, you know, what is the age of consent in New York State? Most of them can't tell you it's 17, and so a lot of them are shocked right off the bat about that. So then to add the laws to it, you just kind of see them be very scared.
Or if they do know it's under 17, they think that magically, if both parties are under 17, it just kind of cancels each other out. Like two negatives make a
Or there was
positive.
like one we heard was if there's like 2 years in between or something, then it's okay. And it's like, no, that's not true. So, I mean, we're definitely educating, and I'm hoping that's making, you know, some people aware so that this isn't going to happen to them, you know, before it does happen. But I think some of them, by seeing the looks, it's definitely happening, and the statistics Kate shared show that it is. So it's good that we're going out there and we're showing them, you know, these are the things that are happening to kids your age. And if you don't think it can happen to you, you know, you're wrong. These are the laws. and nobody is above the law, so it's going to apply to you. So just be aware of it and don't do it. And one of the things I say to children, and I kind of get some little giggles, is that if you feel like you're going to be comfortable enough to send a naked image to somebody, then you should be willing to stand in front of that person naked and allow them to take that picture with their eyes instead of with a camera. That way, they can't use that against you. And if you don't feel comfortable doing that in front of them, then you shouldn't be sending the image in the first place. And I think, you know, they might laugh at that, but there's a truth to that. Mm-hmm. And I think that hopefully it's hitting home for some people, so I'll keep saying it anyway, but you know, it's the same thing with bullying. People can say a lot behind a screen, but when it comes face to face, they can't say those same things. So again, it's the technology of it.
Right, and it's so impersonal, and you know, you just don't realize that, you know, they don't realize how much this stuff lingers.
Yes.
I think it's important for parents to realize too that to teach your kids about setting boundaries and telling them that they have a right to stand up for what's comfortable for them. I've talked about this before on this show, and I'm a huge advocate for this, and it's actually become a name now, constant messaging. When somebody is constantly text messaging you, saying, where are you, what are you doing? You know, I definitely talk about this all the time, and I was actually on athinline.org. It's MTV's campaign to reduce bullying, digital abuse, and digital discrimination, and they have a separate tab for this constant communication because it happens so often, and I think because of the rise of cell phones now and kids having cell phones at such a younger age, they just think that they have to immediately respond to a text, they have to immediately answer a phone call, they have to do this immediately because they have it, when in reality, you don't. Some questions to ask yourself: why does my boyfriend or girlfriend need to know where I am and what I'm doing every minute of the day? Does this seem normal? Do the messages I'm receiving sometimes make me feel bad? And if you answer, you know, some of these questions honestly, you'll find probably that no, they don't need to text you every 5 minutes asking where you are. They know where you are. They know you're in class, you know, or even if they don't, you'll probably tell them later. You know, there's still some semblance of privacy. Whether you're in a relationship or not, you're allowed to have that alone time. You're allowed to have that privacy. People don't need to know what you're up to all the time. They don't, you know, you could be in the shower. You could be going to the bathroom. People don't take their phones in the shower with them. So, you know, not texting somebody for a half hour is a boundary that maybe you'd like to set, and tell your kids that it's important to do that and to follow through with that. There's also a really neat website I was on earlier today called that'snotcool.com, which I think can really help our students because it's really interactive. It has videos, quizzes, games that they can do.
So they can role model and practice some of these behaviors and some of these techniques.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I thought it was really interesting too because some of the videos they have, they're kind of two-sided videos that will show maybe a minute clip of like a girlfriend constantly texting a boyfriend, where are you, what are you doing, and kind of the boyfriend's thought process. And then side by side is the video from the girlfriend's thought process. It's kind of, what's he doing? Like, I wonder what's going on. Like, is he mad at me? Whatever. And then it will ask you at the end of the video, what's an appropriate way to handle that situation? And then you can pick out.
So it really makes you start thinking.
They give you.
Which is good because it's true. I had this conversation with a person the other day that I don't know if it's that people have just grown up in this generation or the generations that are in school with technology and knowing that if that phone goes off, you know, I need to respond. And I think that, like, I get anxiety sometimes if I can't get right to my phone. And I thought to myself the other day, that is not okay. You know, I'm clearly doing something. Why am I anxious that I can't answer that? And I don't know, and I said, like, that's something we have to educate, that you don't need to, and just because you've grown up that way, feeling that way, it's not something you need to do. Because that's really important.
Because you can doesn't mean it has to happen, right?
And I think that's why I said some people don't think that that is an abusive tendency in a relationship because they've seen it for so long. And they expect everyone else to do it when they text, so they think that if they're texting me, then I need to respond too. But it's just one of those kind of generational things that it's like it's okay to not have your phone on you right then. You're clearly doing something that you can't get to your phone, and that's okay.
That's right. You know, one of the things I wanted to be sure to talk with both of you about, the SUNY system has just come out with some new policies to address sexual assault on campus. One of the provisions revolves around what's being called positive consent. And understanding consent, asking for it, getting it in an informed and positive way is something that everybody struggles with. And just because we have a new law doesn't mean people are going to become expert at it or good at it or really understand how to do it. So, so let's talk about what consent is, what do people need to understand about how to ask for it, and how can we teach effective ways for people, especially young people, as they're beginning to figure out, you know, how to have relationships, what that involves, and you know, how can they do that? Is there ways, can we role model and practice asking for consent the same way that we're talking about doing some of these other things?
I think the first thing when it comes to consent that you have to keep in mind is age, first and foremost. You know, in New York State, the law says 17. If you're under the age of 17, you can't consent whether you say the words yes or not. That person that engages in sexual acts with you can still be, you know, it can still be considered sexual assault, whether that person as well is under the age of 17. Kate and I had a discussion with some students about two people who are under the age of 17 engaging in sexual acts, and the police explaining both of those people could face charges. And so it's important to know, first and foremost, the age of 17. Second, that the person has to be completely sober. They can't have any substances of any kind in their system, otherwise that can impair their ability to give consent. So again, if you engage in sexual acts with someone who is on the or under the influence of drugs or alcohol, then that could also be labeled as sexual assault. Then along with consent comes that both people are agreeing that anyone can decide to stop the activity at any time. So just because you say yes in the beginning does not mean you have to say yes completely all the way through, and that you're consenting to one behavior doesn't mean that you're giving access to everything. Again, it could be consenting to kissing, but not, you know, anything else going forward. The easiest way is to just ask, you know, just ask, are you comfortable with doing this moving forward? It doesn't have to be awkward. I think people could get creative, but saying no definitely means no, and people shouldn't be pressured. Or it shouldn't become a game, you know, should not become a game where people think that you're trying to play hard to get and they're going to push you or coerce you into, you know, saying yes, or you shouldn't feel guilted into it by anybody. And then it's important to think about the red flags too that are going to be associated with that too. If people are pressuring you into it, then that's something that you should really think about. If you can feel someone's body language saying, you know, no, and yet they're trying to say yes maybe because they feel like that's what you want to hear, then you have to take that into account as well.
You know, another thing, to go back for a moment to what we were talking about earlier about electronic stuff, the fact that somebody says yes to a in-person relationship doesn't mean they're saying yes to a video performance.
Exactly.
And so much of that can happen now without anybody realizing that there's a camera on in a room. Those things are so subtle these days, and so that's important, I think, for people to understand that this stuff can have ramifications, and that they need to be really thinking very, very clearly about a lot of things when they're thinking about these kinds of things.
With all the dangers of technology, though, I do just want to say one point, that some good that can come out of it is bridging the gap and maybe even starting these conversations. It may be uncomfortable to have that conversation with your partner of, should we take things to the next level? Should we engage in sexual activity or not? And if you feel more comfortable, you know, messaging, Facebook, texting, you can start to talk about it. Clearly, you always need to follow up in person, but at least that could get the conversation started. And are we ready, you know, for this step in our relationship? Is this something we want to do?
And there are so many websites, especially campuses I've seen looking through presentations that have kind of, students have shared creative ways to ask for consent. And, you know, you can even just Google those things, and, you know, like I said, it doesn't have to be awkward and weird and, you know, hard to ask. You can just look those ways up and, you know, be prepared and just make it fun. And I think if it's the right time and you're both comfortable with each other, then, you know, it's going to work out. You just have to be careful and be creative with the way you do it.
And at least be 17.
Yes, and at least be 17.
So let's talk a little bit about what parents should be looking for if they suspect that their teen is in an unhealthy relationship. What are some of the red flags that would be a warning sign that you might want to be a little bit concerned about what your teenager was doing and thinking in a relationship?
Some of the most common ones I talk about with teens and, you know, educators is if you really notice a change in the performance in school or interest in sports or like a certain group of friends, that's a big red flag. If someone's suddenly changing the way they look, how they, or what kind of sports that they were engaged in, who they're hanging out with. Those are signs of, you know, isolation and maybe a controlling behavior that person might be wanting them to look or act a certain way, dress a certain way, maybe prohibiting them from doing their homework because they want them to be with them, you know, 24/7. And then again with the sports, they don't want them to be out in a social setting, you know, making friends or whatever, so they try to kind of isolate them. Those are a few of the ones that I talk to people about, as well as, you know, checking in with your teen and talking to them and just seeing, what's going on. Do you ever see that they're kind of fearing their partner? Are you ever seeing that they're making excuses for them? Maybe their partner came over and blew up in front of their parents, and then their own teen is making excuses for that behavior and saying, oh, it was my fault, and trying to come up with something to cover it up. Of course, unexplained injuries, if it does get to a physical level, is another really big red flag to look for.
Mm-hmm. Definitely jealousy and possessiveness and the constant communication that we've already talked about. If he has mood swings, or if he's making false accusations, or is very possessive, telling them what to do, if he has an explosive temper. I know a lot of our clients come in and they say, he just snapped, he just loses it every once in a while. But the fact about domestic violence and dating violence is that he didn't just lose it, he has control, and he's maintaining the control in the relationship, and he's choosing to act out in that moment. That's a choice that he or she is making, because we know that abusers can be men and women.
Mm-hmm. Well, we do know that building healthy relationships it takes a lot of work. It's something that, you're not born knowing how to do it, and, you need to learn it. Hopefully you're getting good, positive messages within your own family and within your own peer group, but if that doesn't happen, so what are the last, in our last couple of minutes, what are the messages you want to leave our viewers with about healthy relationships and what they can do to safeguard themselves and to watch out for their friends?
I think one of the biggest things is kind of educate yourself if you don't know, because a lot of these teens are new. And if you've never really had a positive experience with a relationship, kind of get out there and see what the websites are that we've kind of listed have to offer. loveisrespect.org and Break the Cycle are two other ones that I actually use in presentations with my teens. They're very interactive. They spell out a lot of the red flags and kind of what to do in certain scenarios. And then always, always call Renewal House. If you have questions, it's okay to call us. We're not going to say, any question's a dumb one, or, say that's not abuse and hang up on you. We'll talk with you. A lot of people don't know, so they just want to know. And it's okay to call and just talk to an advocate. We're there 24/7, and just to get a little bit of feedback about this is what's going on, is it abusive? And then to know what options you might have, because a lot of people think that there might not be any based on their age and that they're only young and their parents don't even know they're dating. And God, I don't even want to tell them because I'm so afraid of what their reaction's going to be. But it's a confidential thing, and you can just call and get some feedback about, what we can help with. And yes, it might be abusive, and then what the options are for them.
Okay.
Definitely, and I would just say communication is key. Communication, parents with their children, but also teenagers with their friends, and even in their relationships, because like I said about the constant communication, that could be one aspect of the relationship. The rest of the relationship could be fine, it could be perfect and wonderful, and if this is the one thing that's going on, it may be helpful to address with that person, hey, this is something you're doing a lot, I'd really like you to stop. And then you can even see from that person's reaction what kind of relationship this is, because if that person is saying, I didn't realize it was bothering you, I'm sorry, let's work to fix it. That's the sign of a healthy relationship. If you get somebody that's going to be defensive about that and is going to turn it around and say it's your fault, and if you just answered their text the first time, they wouldn't have had to do that, that's a key that you're in an unhealthy relationship.
Okay. Well, as always, our half hour speeds by, and there's always so much to talk about. The good news is Caitlin and Val will be back, at least I hope Val will be back with us in April for Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and so we can talk about some more of these things then, and perhaps especially as it impacts a slightly older generation or set of viewers. So thank you both for coming in.
Absolutely,
and thank you for the work that you and your colleagues do every day, because it makes such a huge difference to a lot of people in this county, and there's a lot of folks out there in trouble, and it's good to have some friendly voices at the other end of the phone 24/7 to help out. So thank you both. Our time is up. These conversations are a production of North Country Matters, produced here in the studios of WCKN on the campus of Clarkson University. This show is a civic collaboration between the St. Lawrence County branch of the American Association of University Women, the St. Lawrence County League of Women Voters, and the Communication and Media Department here at Clarkson University. Until next time, remember, our North Country matters.